All right, this video is going to go over some care and tips for your unit. Let's start with the pump. I've tried to arrange the plumbing on the quick connect fittings, and the way you use these is you push in and you pull in and then you pull back out. If you just try to pull out, you won't get it. You'll be frustrated. Pull this in, push in the tube, it releases the teeth, and then you can pull it out. Once you know the technique, it's really simple. If your pump isn't spraying right, if it's not priming right, chances are you're getting air in one of these fittings somewhere. And one of the things you can do is just unhook that nip off about 1/8 of an inch. You'll see where the teeth mark are. Nip that off and then install it back in and go around until that air leak stops. Typically, this pump will self-prime, but if it doesn't, one of two things is going to happen. Take your pin and depress the little nipple that's here, and it'll release pressure. And then that'll allow the airflow to go, and your pump will spray. You could have this turned off, in which case it's a demand pump. It won't make any noise, and you'll think it's broken because nothing happens when you hit the switch. Make sure this front valve is turned open, and if it's still not priming, let the air out of this by depressing the nipple with the pin that holds your never spill feature on. As a last resort, if you've done all that and it still won't prime, take a mouthful of water, clean off the tube, blow the mouthful of water into it, and that works every time. It happens to me. And that will start it running. Put it back in your solution, and that will cause the pump to prime. Your filter could be clogged. Chances are that's not going to be it, but it could be a clogged filter too, where it's not allowing any flow. Let's see, there's one more thing with that. We want to make sure we're not getting air in. We want to make sure we let the pressure out, because what will happen sometimes if you use oxy products and it makes bubbles and it sits for a couple days, sometimes those bubbles build up in an area and it wants to, I'll call it a bubble lock, and won't allow the air or fluid to pass by, and when we release the pressure, it lets those bubbles out, lets the air out, and that'll allow it to flow. So typically that's it. You might have to prime it by mouth in a last case resort, but it's usually releasing pressure on the nipple or making sure you have the valve open. We went over in the prior video, if you want to change your tips, it is this simple. I just went from a number 4 to a number 3. I just went from a vertical spray to a horizontal spray in a matter of just seconds. I could put a number 5 in here if I wanted more, but your machine's going to come with a number 4 and a number 3 tip. This will use a little less moisture, but that pretty much goes over the spray system. Your wheels, your axles, you can put a little bit of oil between the washer and the bearing, and this will just spin for days. It really spins nicely. A little bit of oil from time to time is all you need to do here. And that's it. This is really a pretty low maintenance machine, unless it's dropped or you have an accident with it or something. This stainless steel bracket here has to remain. It does two things. It keeps this cap from impacting the handle and the never spill lift section, and it also keeps it from moving up too far so your handle tube doesn't impact your pump. So this is something you don't want to change from the factory adjustment. You want to keep that exactly where it is. We talked about the adjustment clamp. So with a 3/16 wrench, you can just simply adjust this. So if you want it to go up or down, just loosen it and retighten it. You don't have to torque it down. You don't have to strip it. It doesn't take a lot. And this 3/16 will work on a lot of the other hardware on the machine as well. You have a breaker here, which mine has never went off in 8 months of testing, but it's there in case it does go off, in case something goes wrong. You have your momentary switch and your continuous on switch, down for continuous on, to operate the front pump. We turn off the front sprayer, connect the power pre-spot system, and pull the trigger on the gun, and that'll work. When we want to go back to the front sprayer, just simply disconnect that hose and open up the valves to the front sprayer sprays. Then you have the choice of momentary or continuous on. Later in the video, I'm going to actually show you how to replace this, because typically if something goes wrong with the machine, that's going to be it, because it got something impacted in the van, or eventually you will wear it out. It's good for so many cycles, and some guys are really strong in their hands and they might squeeze it harder than it needs and eventually break this toggle. So we'll go over how to replace that. The care of your finish on the machine, it's not the product I brought, but when we put it together, we put a coat of ceramic wax on it. It covers the decal to keep the decal lasting longer for you, and it keeps a nice finish on the machine, so it has a beautiful look for it for years to come. I would do that from time to time. The other thing you might run across is adjusting the assembly that clamps the handle. So what I like to do is, when I open it, and just to back up a little bit, you put a little grease, a little oil on these cam lobes every couple of weeks, and this will operate easier for you. It won't squeak, and it's just a much nicer system. So if you have to adjust this, and this bolt will eventually stretch and you will need to adjust it, you'll turn the nut, and you want to turn it just enough where it's giving you a little bit of tension, resistance, when you're lowering it. That way, when I go to squeeze the handle, I'm going to have enough force on it that this securely grips the handle tube and you don't get any slippage. So if you're going upstairs or you're lifting it to put in your vehicle, you want this to lock really tight. Now, as time goes by, this is going to become dirty. So I'm going to show you what to do with that. You're going to take off the nut, and there's a washer here, which I don't think you can see from your angle. You're going to pull this assembly out. Now the handle's going to want to slide forward. So I'm just going to put a little rag in there just to protect that cooling fin. And the neat thing about this, voila, this opens up. So what's going to happen is you're going to get the breeze in here, and if it gives you resistance and it doesn't move the way you want it to, you're going to be tempted to spray oil in there. Don't do it. It's going to cause oxidation in here, and little particulates going to get trapped in the oil, and it'll be better for a little bit, but then it will be worse. The better thing to do is take some real fine steel wool and just clean this off with a steel wool. And we even do this when we get it. We're going to just polish this handle tube, and this makes it nice and clean, takes off if there's any little burrs or scratches or imperfections, which there will be. Then that cleans that up. It's also just a nice way to clean it without any chemicals. So we're going to put this back together. Doesn't matter which side you put here, they're both the same. You're going to put this back around. All right. What's going to be important is there's one thick washer that has a hole, square hole through it, rectangular hole through it, and then there's 3 stainless steel washers. 2 of those 3 stainless steel washers are going to allow that rectangular flange to pass through it. We want to keep these all level, because if they're tilted, it's not going to work. You want to keep that all level. I'm going to put this back together, and it's very simple. We put this up. We're going to pull the handle tube back. I'm just going to put this back through the holes, making sure that that's lined up. Put my washer back on, and I'm going to tighten this up. And remember, I want to continue to tighten it. See, my washer's not lined up here. Now it's lined up. So I want look here, I want all 3 of these level. And I'm going to continue to tighten up. It's really super loose now. So I'm going to continue to turn this until it starts to want to grab. Now it's grabbing a little bit. I'm going to go just a little bit more. Now it's got a really firm resistance. And when I pull down the cam, actually I can go a little further. I'm going to go another quarter turn. Now when I pull the cam down, that's really putting tension on this. It's really grabbing the handle tube. And when I pull this back, it's locked on there. So that takes a little bit. You'll try it a couple times to get the adjustment right. But that's the biggest thing. We'll show you how to replace this should you break it, and keeping this handle tube clamp operating properly. Check your filter maybe once a month. If you have the time, put on the ceramic wax. Keep the machine nice, keep your chrome clean. Chrome can eventually rust. If you use Oxy products, this anodized pump cooling cover will fade. The peroxide will affect the anodizing, and that will start to lighten in color. That's not covered by warranty. If you use peroxide, that's going to happen. It falls under it is what it is. Should you ever need to pull the Never Spill assembly out, it's as simple as pulling out it's that simple. So this side is fixed. There's the German clamp on the other side, and there's a set screw here where we've tightened that down so this stays this way. If you want to use the optional storage caddy, then you can apply that on here, and that even has a set screw in it. Let me show you. So you can tighten that down if you're going to leave it on there for a long time. If you're going to be on and off a lot, I wouldn't use a set screw. I'd just use the pin. It works just fine. So we talked about the lights illuminating. So if these illuminate and something's wrong with your pump, chances are it just needs to be primed. I've used these pumps for years and years, and they very, very seldomly go bad, especially with the Bonnet Pro products. They just, they play nice together. Same thing with the motor. If you have to replace the motor, there's 8 bolts. You undo the cord and pull the motor off. It's that simple. Same thing with the pump. If you had to replace the pump, you disconnect the couple of incoming and outgoing push lock fittings. There's 4 bolts. And again, we have a different type of plug, so you can't confuse the two. You can't plug the motor wire into the pump wire receptacle. And then these will illuminate to tell you that you have power coming down to it, and should there anything go wrong, then we can look at our motor and pump. If these aren't illuminated, then that tells us we're not getting power from the wall, or maybe something happened up here. So it's pretty simple to take care of it, and if you do, you'll get years and years of life out of your machine. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. We hand build them. It takes months to build one. By the time the chassis are hand fabricated and water jet cut and then hand welded and ground and go off to the powder coater, and by the time we assemble all the fittings and do everything that we do with the machine, it really takes quite a bit of effort to get one of these made. It's not a simple machine. We make adjustments to the wiring, we improve the wiring, we take out what is in there, and we replace it with a 12 gauge better wire with better connectors in it. And to give you guys a US made and designed product that you'll have years of use and be proud to take in your customer's location. Should you have any questions, contact us at MiniMax, and we'll be happy to help you. You have a great day. Now, a couple things I forgot to mention. We don't want to leave this out in the truck overnight and let the pump freeze, because your lines will freeze, the water in your pump will freeze. It may damage the pump, it may not, but at least you'll have to thaw it if you go in the customer's location. So I would keep this warm. Don't leave it in a freezing climate. Your bumper wheels are pretty self-explanatory. When you go to, let me just check, make sure I didn't miss anything for you guys. If you're going to put peroxide in it and leave it for a long time, I would flush. If you're going to use a peroxide-based product and leave it for a long time, I would flush it out. Peroxide can have a little reaction with the brass, and it won't form the bubbles. Just run a little water through it when you're done. You have a lift handle here, and you have another lift handle here. These can be used as tie-down points in your vehicle. This is very bottom heavy, which makes it easy to operate, gives you very good push-in for your cleaning. and also makes it less likely to tip over. If this was full, you could still tip it over in the van. If this is empty, it's not likely to tip over, but I would still secure it in the van. The best way to pick this up is to have the jug on the other side, and depending on how high it is when you go to pick it up and your personal dimensions, you may grab it here, you may grab it this way, and then it's not too bad to lift it and then place it where you need to place it. If you try to do it from this side, this is going to protrude into your stomach. It's going to be very uncomfortable, and it's just not the best way to lift it. So I would be on the opposite side of your jug and grab it how you're comfortable, or here, and then do your lifting. Okay.